News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. Thank you for spending some of your Saturday afternoon with me. It's a pleasure to have this show sharing my thoughts with all of you. Well, Claptrap Clinton is at it again. She launched her campaign once, but no, we have a second launch. Have you ever heard of anything so ridiculous? When she launched her campaign, part of this broadcast on American Heartland, we criticized her. I said, this is a horrible launch. And so far, it's been a dreadful campaign. She launched her campaign with a YouTube clip, and I think she was trying to be trendy. She was trying to imitate Barack Obama, who has used YouTube very effectively, who has been able to capture new technology, use new technology, often brilliantly. The Clintons aren't really known for that, but they tried, so they launched this YouTube clip, and it was really weak. I was one of those people that said, she needs a big speech at a great venue. And that's how you launch a campaign, as we've seen on the Republican side. What Senator Ted Cruz did at Liberty University, what Mike Huckabee did. All the candidates so far that have launched in the GOP race, many of them have done a really good job of launching it, with the exception of Jeb Bush, who is behaving like Clinton. There's like a pre-launch and then there's a real launch. Pretty idiotic, if you ask me, and I don't think it makes a good impression. But anyways, here we are. So, Hillary's campaign has floundered. The YouTube clip didn't really work, and she's been really pestered by both the left and the right with questions. And the questions have abounded about the seedy, unlawful activity regarding the Clinton Foundation. The questions have emerged again and again about why she won't take questions, why she's not talking to the media, why all her events are staged. And finally, on the left and on the right, people are saying, why is she not taking a stand on Trade Promotion Authority, which everybody's talking about, TPA and TPP? So really, since she's launched her campaign, there have been nothing but questions. And her poll numbers have sank. Now, according to the latest polls, 57% of Americans regard her as untrustworthy. So essentially, the campaign had to do something. Let's reintroduce Hillary. And in terms of a public relations campaign, what they did with a big speech, with Hillary looking her best, had some elements that were quite effective, especially if you don't follow the news very carefully. You might be bamboozled. So Hillary, looking better than I've seen her look in a long time, with golden blonde hair, very stylish, with a very effective blue pantsuit on a sunny day in Roosevelt Island in New York, she launched her campaign once again. So if you haven't been following the news for the last 3 months, if you're half brain dead, the campaign has now begun once again. Well, let's listen to Hillary Clinton, the most known name in America reintroducing herself. Roll it.
It is wonderful to be here with all of you, to be in New York with my family, with so many friends, including so many New Yorkers who gave me the honor of serving them in the Senate for 8 years. To be right across the water from the headquarters of the United Nations, where I represented our country many times. To be here in this beautiful park, dedicated to Franklin Roosevelt's enduring vision of America, the nation we want to be, and in a place with absolutely no ceilings.
Okay, so what is she doing there? She's telling us her bio. So she's been a senator. She represented America at the United Nations, basically alluding to her role as Secretary of State. But it's a bio. It's not a record of achievement. As though having a position is the same thing as achieving something in a position. And then she has to address a key question. She is trying to be a barrier breaker, right? As she says, it's a place without ceiling. So she's going to play that gender card this time. But the problem is her campaign is overshadowed by two men. Her husband, Bill Clinton, his record as president, and Barack Obama's record as president. So what is she going to do? How is she going to, on the one hand, tap into the fact that she rose on the coattails of these men, but at the same time distinguish herself? She found another card to play. The Roosevelt card. The whole speech was about trying to position Hillary within the Democratic Party historically. And to say, look, there have been some key Democratic leaders, and Hillary is going to be unlike her husband, unlike Barack Obama, but within a long-standing Democratic tradition of fighting for the little guy. And so that was kind of the common theme throughout this entire speech. She, the one who is worth millions of dollars, millions that have been achieved, that have been earned in an unlawful manner, as we've discovered and we've explained on this show many times, by basically pimping out the office of Secretary of State to foreign nations. She is going to be the fighter for the working men and women of America. That's going to be the campaign theme. And how does she do it? Well, she's got to return to some of the themes that worked for Barack Obama. Bash Bush and bash the Republicans because they had led us to economic collapse, and only the Democrats found the way forward. Roll it.
When President Obama honored the bargain, we pulled back from the brink of depression, saved the auto industry, provided health care to 16 million working people, and replaced the jobs we lost faster than the historical average after a financial crash. But it's not 1941 or 1993 or even 2009. We face new challenges in our economy and our democracy. We're still working our way back from a crisis that happened because time-tested values were replaced by false promises. Instead of an economy built by every American, for every American, we were told that if we let those at the top pay lower taxes and bend the rules, their success would trickle down to everyone else. What happened? Well, instead of a balanced budget with surpluses that could have eventually paid off our national debt, the Republicans twice cut taxes for the wealthiest, borrowed money from other countries to pay for 2 wars, and family incomes dropped. You know where we ended up. Except it wasn't the end.
Well, doesn't this sound familiar? It sounds really familiar to me. She is returning to all of the same themes that Barack Obama used, not in 2012, but in 2008. That speech sounded like a speech that could be delivered in 2008. It's not 2008. We have now had years of Obama economics. And although we've weathered the worst of the crash, the problem is the economy is largely stagnant. And it's a result of failed Democratic policies. But if you're brain dead, and if you don't know what year it is, that it's now 2015, this might actually gin you up. This might rev you up. As it appears that those people in the crowd cheering wildly, they're falling for it. It's not 2015, it's 2008. This by the very woman whose campaign premise is that we can't return to yesterday. She's accusing the Republicans of being yesterday, when in fact, she's talking about policies that are long gone, instead of addressing where the economy stands today in 2015. So she's trying desperately now to argue, well, look, Obama got us out of the crash, as though it's maybe just 1 or 2 years after 2008 and not many, many years after. And we're digging ourselves out of this giant hole, and she is going to be the one that's going to fight and fight and fight for us. The problem is that this fighter can't take a stand on the issues that are present before us, like TPA and TPP. When it came to actually taking a stand right now in 2015, where do you stand? She waffles and dodges. Listen to this.
But I want to say a word about another issue. There's a lot of discussion right now about the potential Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, and I want to tell you what I think needs to be in that agreement. First, let me start by saying no president would be a tougher negotiator on behalf of American workers, either with our trading partners or Republicans on Capitol Hill, than I would be. In my time, 8 years in the Senate, I voted for some trade agreements and I voted against others. I think I have a pretty good idea of what we can do to meet the tests that I believe any trade agreement, especially TPP, must meet. It needs to, number one, protect American workers. Number two, it needs to raise wages and create good jobs at home. Number three, it needs to be in our national security interest. I've been saying that for months. Now, here's what I think should happen now. In order to get a deal that meets these high standards, the President should listen to and work with his allies in Congress, starting with Nancy Pelosi, who have expressed their concerns about the impact that a weak agreement would have on our workers, to make sure we get the best, strongest deal possible, and if we don't get it, there should be no deal.
Claptrap Clinton. Not taking a stand, hedging her bets between Obama and Pelosi. The Democratic Party is currently divided. And where is she? She is AWOL, missing in action. So for all the theatrics of this relaunch, we're back to where we started. On the substance of the matter, We don't hear Hillary Clinton roaring as she pretends to be, I am woman, hear me roar. In fact, this is relaunch number 2 with a whimper.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. And in this segment, we're going to explore Obama's immigration agenda through trade. Yes, everyone's been talking about fireworks on Capitol Hill. The Democrats actually betrayed their own president. Nancy Pelosi stabbed Obama in the back, and she led a wing of the Democratic Party that voted against assistance for displaced workers, which really sunk Trade Promotion Authority. And it was dramatic. It was really dramatic. As of the time of this recording, so far, Trade Promotion Authority is dead. That means TPP is also at this time dead. But the Republicans and some Democrats who support it are vowing to keep fighting. I want you to hear Pelosi on the House floor stabbing Barack Obama in the back.
So my concern about all of this, it's about time. It's about time. Why are we fast-tracking trade and slow-walking the highway bill? It's about time that people have not recovered from, again, 2008 sufficiently to, again, have consumer confidence to turn around our consumer economy. And so I think that today we have an opportunity to slow down. We all know we have to want to engage in trade promotion and the rest of that, but we have to slow down this problem because it is not. Whatever the deal is with other countries, we want a better deal for America's workers.
And so she basically sunk it, even though the president had come to Capitol Hill begging Democrats to support him. And why is the president behaving uncharacteristically? We've seen him operate for so many years where he doesn't court members of Congress as he should. But on this one, he did his best, but it was too little, too late. Here today to discuss the president's immigration agenda via trade is a radio talk show host. He's the spokesman for AMAC. He's a radio and TV commentator, Mr. Josh Bernstein. Welcome to the broadcast.
Great to be with you.
So tell us, what is Obama's real goal with this trade partnership agreement that he's trying to get Congress to pass?
Well, basically, you got to take a trip down memory lane. In 2012, Barack Obama defied Congress and did an executive order called DACA, which allowed the children of illegal immigrants to be in the country. There's about 800,000, almost 1 million of them. And then, obviously, we know in November, as the returns were coming in and the American people were repudiating his policies, he decided not to work with Congress and passed executive amnesty, 5.5 million illegal immigrants, and giving them amnesty. However, because the Republicans were too weak to actually step up and actually stop it when they had the political capital and the will and the leverage to do so, we then punted it to the courts. And thankfully, Judge Hainan put an injunction on the executive amnesty. And then, obviously, Barack Obama went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and was denied once again as the injunction was upheld. So then he comes out and he says, okay, well, I guess I lost, so I'm really not going to bother with amnesty anymore, wink, wink, wink. And the reason I say wink, wink is because of the fact that if he's allowed to have the Trade Promotion Authority and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, in particular the Trade-in Services Agreement, he will be then allowed to change, as the way it's written now, immigration law. So he doesn't care about the $5.5 million that he was repudiated for. That's why he's not going after that anymore, because he understands that if he gets this trade promotion authority in the situation that it sits in now, he can do a lot more than $5.5 million. And if you look at it closer, you will see that there's a page 4 and a page 5 in the negotiated text, and it says that it would require the U.S. to change its work visa process for 40 separate industries. Okay? Then it also states that the period of processing applications may not exceed 30 days. Now, any immigrant that has come here legally and has gone through the process would be more than happy to point out the fact that it is a long and very drawn-out process. It does not take less than 30 days. As a matter of fact, 30 days is probably a minimum amount. So by them putting this language in here stating that all applications may not exceed 30 days, what do you think that means?
But doesn't that just, let me just play devil's advocate for a second. Doesn't that simply mean providing them work permits? That's not the same thing as a path to citizenship or a permanent stay in the country.
Well, I understand that, but we're also not throwing the people out that have expired visas. We're also giving them Social Security numbers and having them have the ability to vote in our elections and change the vernacular of the country, the entire text and context of our country. So I think that when you take all that into consideration, the House needs to understand that they need to put some language in this bill that clearly states that no immigration changes will be allowed with this with the Trade Promotion Authority. Another thing that they have, and it's just a footnote in the agreement, is they actually recommend the elimination of face-to-face interviews, stating that it's too burdensome and it takes too long. Now, the only interpretation of any thinking, clear individual can come to the conclusion of is that they don't want face-to-face interviews because it takes too much time. They don't care. They're not looking at backgrounds. They're not looking to check and see whether or not they're terrorists and things like that. They're just allowing these people into the country, which in turn, again, is exactly what Barack Obama has promised since the beginning of his presidency, to fundamentally transform America.
Right. Now, in this case, you're talking about an authority that the trade partnership would give. You interpret this as it would give it directly to the president to make these decisions, not a commission, an international tribunal, because there's been a lot of fears that what the Trade Pacific Partnership will really do is set up an international body, and that international body will create a group of elite bureaucrats, and they will actually override American sovereignty, and it will be they rather than the president that will make a lot of decisions regarding immigration policy. So you're seeing this as a double-edged sword, both, right?
I certainly do, yeah. And as a matter of fact, I haven't read the actual text, but I know people that have, and they've told me a lot of the detailed information. And you are correct. It will supersede U.S. law. It will supersede the United States Supreme Court past and future decisions, and it will allow foreign companies, which there are about 700 foreign-owned enterprises and businesses in the United States that are operating right now. It will give those businesses a clear economic advantage to skirt our laws, and if they don't agree with an American company, they can then litigate that American company to a UN tribunal, basically, a United Nations governing authority. Now, let's back up a little bit. Trade Promotion Authority is not new, okay? Since 1934, there's been 13 presidents that have requested Trade Promotion Authority, and 12 of them have had it accepted. There's only one case in which it was not, and that is Richard Nixon. And the reason is because of Watergate, and he was getting ready to resign.
Right, and let me just remind everybody, because some people get confused. So Trade Promotion Authority is simply that the president would present a trade bill to Congress, and Congress cannot provide any amendments or make any changes, but has the right to just vote up or down. Continue.
That is correct. And here's the thing, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because I'm against this Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm also against the Trade Promotion Authority, especially the way it's written. However, people need to understand we cannot stop this, and let me explain why. Because in 1974, according to the U.S. Trade Act of 1974, it is exactly what you just said. The president is required to present the negotiated agreement for approval by the House of Congress and must follow strict congressional guidelines during negotiations. In return, Congress agrees to limit debate and amendments before the final vote in order to allow time passage of deals brokered with foreign governments. Moreover, the president is required to make the text public at least 60 days prior to a vote on the agreement. Now, the long and short of that is that even if we deny the president trade promotion authority, because of the 1974 Trade Act, he still has the authority to enter into the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So we're looking at a situation that ultimately we cannot stop, but what we can do is offer amendments now to try to strengthen it to keep this president from usurping more authoritative power. And how do we do that? Well, you've got Jeff Sessions, Senator
Well, I
Sessions.
just want to stop you there 1 second, because if Congress doesn't give him fast track, right, and if I know the Republicans are vowing they're going to keep fighting for it, and they're going to try, but if they don't get fast track, the problem that Obama faces is that other nations will not readily want to engage in a trade deal, because the trade deal will have to be presented to Congress, and Congress will then have the right to make amendments. So it kind of puts a huge brake on Obama's vision of what, and it will limit. You see, I disagree with what you're saying. I mean, I think not getting trade promotion authority is going to really prevent him from moving forward. How do you see him being able to continue without trade promotion authority? I mean, that's why the fight is so brutal right now, because everybody knows what's at stake.
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think a follow-up to that would be, well, look what's happened already with executive amnesty. The only thing that stopped executive amnesty for now are the courts, because the Republicans didn't have the political will to actually step in and stop it when they promised that they would. So Barack Obama, there's no question that he would use an executive order to pass this. And let's remind the listeners that NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was executive order number 12889, signed on December 27th, 1993. So again, NAFTA was an executive order. So what's to keep this president, who has shown the willingness, if you will, egregiously, I might add, to use executive orders as free will, what's to say that he won't use that again to enter into these agreements? And the Republicans haven't stopped him now, so why would they stop him later?
Well, you're raising some really, really good questions. And what I find very disturbing is that right now you say, what's to prevent the Republicans from stopping? The Republicans are not even trying to stop him. I mean, when it came to executive amnesty, there was at least, public protestations. We're going to put an end to this. Boehner called him an emperor and a monarch and so on. In this case, you have Boehner and Paul Ryan, and they're saying that they're going to keep on fighting. And it's obvious what's happening is that there is an alliance between big business and members of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party that want to see cheap labor flood this country. That's really what they want. And they're not going to stop until they achieve that goal, regardless of what it does to our national sovereignty and our national character.
Absolutely correct. I couldn't have said it better myself. One of the things that I say on my show is I call it the Global-Cratic Party of Washington, because I believe that they're all globalists in both parties. There's liberals in both parties. There's very few conservative constitutionalists left in Washington. They're pretty rare these days. And we're in a bad situation because, God forbid a Jeb Bush or a Lindsey Graham or someone like that wins the presidency, we're going to have a continuation of basically what we have seen. And in some respects, again, with technology advancing and everything else, we're going to enter into more of these agreements. So what they're doing ultimately is allowing global governance rather than constitutional governance. And that's the sad part.
Yeah, that is sad. And I do agree with you that that's the ultimate goal. However, right now, from a practical point of view, I think that if Trade Promotion Authority kills TPP at this moment, at this juncture, it's going to be very, very hard for the president to try to get this done through executive order, because the argument will be made, well, Congress has actually literally at this moment rebuffed you. Members of your party have rebuffed you. The courts have rebuffed your previous executive overreach. I think there's going to be a huge public outcry. I don't think it's going to be a slam dunk for him. I agree with you that that's his goal. I just think it's going to be a lot harder than you're suggesting.
Well, here's the thing. The magic number is what, 67? 67 to override an executive order, to veto it. I think if he does go that route and does an executive order, you may see a robust opposition to this, and maybe you will have enough votes to override an executive order, and veto it. But we thought that we might see that with immigration, and we didn't see that, and that's because both parties are privy to this, and they both want this. And so I think that you're going to see a lot of people that you normally would think would vote for that override veto not voting for it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent points. Excellent points. Very perceptive. Thank you so much for joining us. You just heard Josh Bernstein. He is a radio talk show host. He's the spokesman for AMIC, a radio and TV commentator. And the AMIC website is www.amac.us. What can folks find at that website?
Sure. If you are 50 years of age or older and you are maybe a member of AARP and you're tired of them spending billions of dollars on, liberal policies and taking away more of your health care choices, there is an alternative. That alternative, again, is the Association for Mature American Citizens, www.amac.us. It's only $16 a year to join. We've got over 1 million members strong, and we only answer to our members. And everything that we do, we make sure that it's based on, limited government, conservative principles, and giving you more choice in your health care rather than the opposite. And again, you can also reach them at 1-888-262-2006, 888-262-2006. And if you want to learn a little bit more about myself, you can Google Josh Bernstein radio talk show host, or you can go to my website, which is joshbernsteinpoliticalwriter.com.
Well, thank you very much for your analysis, and we will certainly keep a lookout for a possible executive amnesty on trade. Very interesting perspective. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, that was Josh Bernstein basically trying to tell us if they don't go directly through the open door, they're going to jump over the fence to achieve their globalist dreams of transforming America. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that will not die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back. It is summertime, but that does not mean that the activists ever rest in this country. There is a big decision looming. The Supreme Court is going to decide, and that decision is probably going to come at the end of June 29, but we're all waiting for it. The Supreme Court is going to decide on a key case regarding gay marriage. And the question is this: do gays and lesbians have a constitutional right to marry? Or is this question left to each individual state? So, for example, if there is a state ban on gay marriage, is that allowed to stand? If the court rules that that is illegal, that means that same-sex marriage will be accepted, it will be lawful, it will be impossible to stop. So the Supreme Court is going to have to make a big decision. And I think the key question is this: does the will of the people matter? Does the Supreme Court have the right to override the will of the people in particular states? It really will be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, if the Supreme Court decides that, yes, gays and lesbians have a constitutional right to marry, don't think that that's where the debate's going to end. The debate is only going to intensify, because with that decision, two things are going to happen. The activists are going to want more, and the opponents are going to be emboldened and resisting. And let me explain. First, for the activists who are going to want more, it's not going to stop with just granting same-sex marriage. What will happen next is a persecution of Christian institutions that do not accept this. Will, for example, the tax-exempt status of churches remain in place, even if they object to what the Supreme Court mandates as lawful? Will Christianity itself be perceived as promoting discrimination and hate because of its biblical opposition to same-sex marriage? And not just to same-sex marriage, but to any kind of same-sex activity. Will lawsuits abound against Christians just for believing that same-sex marriage is unnatural and immoral? It's not going to stop. The fight is only going to deepen. And in the news, you have folks like Phyllis Schlafly, a very well-known conservative icon, saying that Christians rightly fear persecution over gay marriage. This issue is going to be used as a sword, essentially, a legal sword to try to destroy the Christian faith, to try to present the Christian faith itself as wrong rather than the other way around, where it is the Christian faith that dictates what is right and wrong and society follows. Not now, not here, not in secular America, certainly not if the Supreme Court rules in favor of this constitutional amendment. Now, the question is, what impact is it going to have, not just for the activists, but for Christians who believe that it is their biblical duty to resist this? As I said, the fight is going to grow because the activists will demand more. And on the other hand, you have folks who say, we're not going to accept the ruling. Now, you've got to think about what kind of a social showdown this portends. There is a man by the name of Keith Fournier. He's a Catholic deacon, and he's the founder and president of the Common Good Foundation. And recently at the Family Research Council, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C., he made the following statement, quote, "We will not honor any decision by the Supreme Court which will force us to violate a clear biblical understanding of marriage as solely the union of one man and one woman." He goes on to say that the court cannot change the nature of truth. And he states, "We implore the court to not step outside the legitimate authority of its legitimate authority and unleash religious persecution and discrimination against people of faith. We will be forced to choose between the state and our conscience, which is informed by clear biblical and church doctrine and the natural created order." Essentially, the Supreme Court has to realize that its powers are limited. The Supreme Court doesn't have the right to simply override state laws. The Supreme Court is not, as Huckabee has said, the supreme being. It does not have the right to override the will of the people in various states. And also, Supreme Court has to be very careful. Its role is to defend freedom of speech, to defend freedom of religion, to defend conscience. And folks like Fournier are right. If we Christians believe that the Bible tells us the truth about things, and if the Constitution tells us that we have the right to practice our religion, then anything that the Supreme Court tells us regarding same-sex marriage, we are allowed to resist. And if this changes, this is no longer America. America is supposed to be the land of free speech and freedom of religion. A decision like this by the court has huge implications. And I think what you're going to see across the land is that more and more people are saying, we don't accept judicial overview of cardinal principles. If the Supreme Court violates the Constitution and violates the Bible, these are two things that this country was founded on, the Supreme Court is not right. It's not the supreme being. It's not the supreme God. It's just one branch of the government. And it must ensure that it doesn't act as though it's the only branch of government. Or act like it's the primordial branch of government. It's just one co-equal branch. But all of this beholden to the will of the people. And again, the people understand that same-sex marriage, it's a dangerous road that we are treading. Because what we're doing is we are going against what God, what Jesus, what thousands of years of biblical teaching have told us, and what thousands of years of religious teaching has said across the world. That some unions, especially those which naturally result in procreation, as happens when a man and a woman get together, they can naturally bear children. Those are the unions that a state, a society must hold as the ideal. And if we fail to do that, we are opening the door towards the complete and utter destruction of marriage itself. To accept same-sex marriage is not an endorsement of marriage. It's to say that we do not care for marriage at all. Because marriage will be rendered useless. It will be rendered no longer unique. And no longer based on the fundamental procreative power that it's meant to have. Marriage is supposed to be the engine of social rebirth because of the creation of children. Yes, I know not all people can procreate. Some people need to adopt, etc. Yes, but those are all anomalies. The natural form of creation is by a man and a woman. Even folks who adopt, they have to adopt children that were created by men and women coming together. So, to say that marriage is whatever we want it to be, we're going to open the door towards defining it out of existence. That's what's going to happen. And that's ultimately what gays and lesbians want. Because they don't want heterosexuals to have a golden place in society. Heterosexuals who naturally create. And they don't just want tolerance. They don't want us to say, well, you know what? You have your sexual preferences. Go ahead and do whatever you want to do, because we have tolerance now. We have plenty of tolerance. There's nobody on earth that's as tolerant as Americans are. There's no society that's as tolerant as we are. It's not enough. They don't want tolerance. They want legitimacy. And once they get legitimacy, they want equality with heterosexuals, full social equality in their families. And once they get equality, you know what's next? They're going to persecute Christians who believe otherwise. It will not end. One of the things that we have seen as clear as day with the sexual revolution cannot be appeased. There's never enough of it granted. It's never enough. Since the 1960s, first it was, you know what, let's just open the doors here, allow a little premarital hanky-panky, and then for folks, you know what, some people will get married and it's okay, just allow the premarital sex thing. Okay, so the doors would open to the premarital sex. And so it was like, you know what, we got to be more open to divorce. Okay, let's open the door to divorce. Then after that, it's like, you know what, you got to be open to like cohabitation. People should be able to live together and not give, okay, let's do that. And then after that, it's, you know what, people have all kinds of different sexual preferences. They like men with men, women with women. Okay, let's strike all these sodomy laws. You know what, you can do whatever you want now. But it's never enough. Now it's you need marriage. Now you need to be transgendered. It's never enough because, and I'll say something really politically incorrect, perversion feeds on more and more perversion. Because once perversion is socially acceptable, the thrill is gone. So in order to get the same thrill, you've got to augment the perversion. And that's why biblically we've always been told lust is fundamentally insatiable. You can't ever satisfy lust. That's why, as individuals, we're told you got to get a hold of lust. And you become the master of yourself rather than sex driving you. Well, in our society, sex drives us. We can't get a hold of this lust. We can't stop it. And it's devouring us. It's eating us from within. And it's only going to get worse. The perversion is only going to grow. And there are folks out there that are saying enough is enough, even to the point of saying we're going to stand up against the Supreme Court. Well, I really hope that the Supreme Court has the good judgment to rule. Let the states decide and let the people decide what is right on this key issue that defines civilization. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that are never going to die.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Shut up, just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up, shut it up, just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up, shut up.
Well, talk about insatiable lust and a revolution that will not end. More and more, I'm seeing stories about open marriages. This is another one of those frontiers that they're going to keep talking about. I think this topic is only going to grow. Recently, there was a cover story on Star Magazine about Goldie Hawn and Kirk Russell, who have been together for many, many years, but they have an open relationship. And also, Jada Pinkett Smith went on the airwaves. She's been married to Will Smith, the father of her children, for many years. And she was known previously for saying that their union has lasted this long because for them, divorce is not an option. And on Howard Stern, she explained just how this marriage works. Roll it.
I'm not here to be anybody's watcher.
Does he tell you about crushes?
Yeah, right.
Oh, absolutely.
He does?
You have to. Come on, Howard.
I wouldn't do that.
You have to in this business.
No.
You got to trust who you're with. As long as Will can look himself in the mirror and be okay, I'm good.
You're into it all. I mean, role-playing, the whole thing, right?
I'm into everything.
You'll put an outfit on for your husband?
Well, I mean, look, I change my hair a lot.
I love that.
I like, playing different roles in public, so you can imagine what I might do in private.
Well, Jada, I don't think whatever you're doing in private is working if Will is so eager to have such an open relationship with you. Well, listen, you heard it here. Open marriages is another frontier that we're going to hear lots of talk about. Open marriage, that very phrase is an oxymoron. A marriage is supposed to be exclusive. And open marriages do not work. In my judgment, they are, by their very nature, a sign of impending marital failure. We'll see how long Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith keep it together. But no matter what people say, this is the premise of open marriage, that, you can have an emotional union with your spouse, but we all need a great deal of sexual variety. And so why not permit one another to have a lot of sexual variety with other folks and share that in discussion with the person that you have a commitment with and an emotional attachment with. So that's the theory, right? Again, one of those liberal theories, which might be on the surface enticing to some, but in reality, what happens? Usually, those who have open marriages, sooner or later, there is someone who comes along in all of these flings, these so-called meaningless flings, whose emotional attachment becomes very strong. One develops a very strong emotional attachment. That's one of the big lies about sex. It's never Because the mind and body, the way the human being is structured, the mind and body are one. You can't untangle them for long. You can try, but ultimately you can't contain it. Jealousy and resentment ultimately surface. The big lie that liberals try to promote is that monogamy is a failure and monogamy is contrary to human nature. And they reference, people who cheat and divorces and rampant pornography as a testament to the failure of monogamy. But I look at it the reverse. The fundamental drive of men and women is for monogamy. That is what's most natural. Because yes, there are divorces. Yes, there's all these aberrations to the exclusive union. But historically, over time, when men and women unite, they, for the most part, want to claim one another as exclusively theirs. That is what is even more natural than straying. And so far, our society has rejected this idea of open marriages, or they're called polyamorous relationships. We don't have enough studies on them, but it ranges from 4% to as little as 1% of the population engages in this sort of thing. Mostly because it's plain common sense. If he or she asks you for permission to have sex with other people, he or she is basically asking you to downgrade the exclusivity of your relationship and essentially has one foot out the door. That's just common sense. So Jada Pinkett Smith, just shut up. All right. Well, I don't know if you've been following this story. It has me hooked. It's about the two individuals who escaped from a maximum security prison. They escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York, and they have been on the lam. They are two men who are apparently they co-opted somebody from the inside who gave them power tools, and they used these power tools to break out of their cell, to basically go underneath the prison system and pop out of a manhole. Can you believe that? Onto the street, and they have disappeared. The authorities cannot find them. And there's a lot of speculation on the internet. Where are they now? Can they escape for long? Well, I did a little bit of research on this to discover that most often those who escape are caught. And the reason they're caught is that they may have a brilliant escape plan, but they don't have a good plan on what they're going to do on the outside. Or they don't have enough discipline to maintain cohesion, to remain, or to have the discipline to remain incognito. And I was wondering as I'm reading this story, well, what would I do? What would I do, first of all, if I was told that I would never, ever, ever be able to escape from a prison, that I would never be able to leave the premises? I think I, too, would dream day and night of escape. And once having achieved that, once having achieved what seems an impossible goal, what would I do to escape detection? Now, if these criminals are as good on the outside as they have been on the inside, they probably have a really good plan to escape detection. I think some of the things I would do is sometimes one of the best ways to escape is hide in plain sight, right? Not hide in a barn, not hide in a field. That's where the authorities are looking now. That's where they have all their dog sniffers. But do two things right away. Split up, because the police are looking for two men together. And then, because their pictures are everywhere, radically change your looks. And radically change your looks could mean dress up as a woman. With all that Bruce Jenner talk, they must have been seeing a lot of that on TV. Maybe they look like women. Maybe they're the sexy woman beside you right now that you can't even identify. Try to look like a woman, or with all this talk of this woman from the NAACP who decided to be black because she wanted to be black, why not disguise yourself as a totally different race? with all the makeup that we have nowadays, that's not that hard to do. Or try to blend in with the Hispanic population, with the illegals that have a huge underground network. You know, this is one of those stories where it's really fascinating to watch. Because on the one hand, these are two convicted killers. So obviously, we all want to, make sure that they don't harm anybody else, that they're captured and that they're imprisoned once again. But on the other hand, this is like an incredible movie that you just can't stop reading about or you can't stop watching it. You want to see the movie version of it. It's like Bonnie and Clyde. How long will this manhunt last? How long will it go? How clever are they? And if they've been that clever to escape from a maximum security prison, will they be just as clever on the outside? It's really one of those stories that falls into our grab bag. Fascinating to watch. And I, for one, can't wait to see the movie version of this, however it ends up. Well, this is Dr. Grace. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I look forward to spending some time with you next week. And in the meantime, you've been listening to the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, who every week upholds values that will not die.
Here's what I tell everyone. I was born by God's dear grace.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.